So I just made a video and I posted a few days ago about how Kanye West and Taylor Swift are somehow connected to the back-to-back theme, also connected to the 51 that is connected to the Cleveland Cavaliers. I mentioned how Kanye West sung the Queen song at Glastonbury. There's a whole bunch of other stuff with that, but it's all in regards to Freddie Mercury, the gay band. It was all about, it was the day after gay marriage was legalized. It ties into Queen Elizabeth and whatnot. I'll leave a link to my Kanye West playlist stuff. There's a whole lot of information to it. Moral of the story, CNN puts this article out about Freddie Mercury's voice, and they did a scientific study on it and whatnot. Just a pretty pointless article, but anyway, Freddie in gematria equals 51. Just like Kanye West, just like Taylor Swift. I even talked about when Kanye West was in Glastonbury, it was still, the Freddie Gray stuff was still pretty big in the news. Freddie equals 51 because he spelled it this way. Gray equals 51. There was a big Gray theme. Gray's Anatomy equals 51. They killed off Dr. McDreamy on Gray's Anatomy. I talked about the 50 Shades of Grey that came out in Black History Month. The Confederates in the Civil War wore gray coats because they couldn't afford to dye their uniforms, so the Confederates wore the gray coats. Freddie Gray was arrested on April 12th, the same day that the Civil War began. He died on April 19th, the same day that the first death of the Civil War was. The word Confederate also equals 51. And then, of course, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland equals 51. Cleveland Cavs equals 51. LeBron James equals 51. They play in Quicken Loans Arena. Quicken Loans equals 51. Cleveland hasn't won a sports championship in 51 years. And I've been talking about how this 51 actually, it is coded to the Cavs, but there's bigger events that it is coded to. Which I'll talk a little bit more as we move on. So, Freddie Mercury in gematria equals 154, just like Glastonbury, where Kanye West sung and whatnot. And there's a whole bunch of 154 around the Super Bowl. Denver Broncos equal 154. It was in Levi Stadium that equals 154. The Broncos finished with a 15-4 record on the season. Some other interesting ones, especially like in regards to Back to the Future. I've talked about how it's all connected to Back to the Future previously. Even in regards to the Gray's Sports Almanac that's in that movie, where he can rig sports because he knows the future and whatnot. But anyway, plutonium 239, that equals 154. That's what they make nuclear bombs with, plutonium 239. Plutonium was the gas for time travel and whatnot. Nuclear reactor equals 154. Just found them kind of interesting. Also, Abraham Lincoln died on 15/4. Talked a lot about the death of Will Smith. I've even talked about it way, way before that, but the Fresh Prince equals 154. Prince Charles' wife is Princess Camilla. She equals 154. Freddie Mercury was HIV positive. HIV positive equals 154. You know, right after the Paris attacks, we had Charlie Sheen come out and say that he had HIV. And I even showed how it connected to South Park, and the Paris attacks connected to the movie Team America. I've also been talking about this 341, 134, the numbers you can rearrange to make pi. The Kansas Amtrak derailment was on March 14th, or Pi Day. The Chester, Pennsylvania train derailment had 341 passengers. The Virginia Cavaliers coach was Tony Bennett, and he collapsed with 34.1 seconds left in the first half or whatever. But anyway, moral of the story, his name equals 154. The NBA Finals also began on the 154th day this year. Also interesting in regards to 51, Batman equals 51. Remember, Donald Trump said that he was Batman. There's been all kinds of Batman stuff in the news. Even the guy who invented the Batmobile died last year. In August, you had Morgan Freeman's granddaughter who died. CNN even put a picture with him and his granddaughter at the Batman premiere. Uh, the guy who dressed up like Batman and went around to hospitals died. And Batgirl died all in the same week that Donald Trump said that he was Batman. Also in the new movie Batman vs. Superman, doesn't it just seem a little bit weird that Wonder Woman's real name is Diana Prince? It just makes me think a lot of Princess Diana, who's the first wife of Prince Charles, also the mother of Prince William and whatnot, who if Prince Charles dies, then Prince William will be next in line to be the king. At the end of Batman vs. Superman, Superman even dies, but then he technically comes back to life. But it's still interesting that Batman doesn't die, but Superman does. Superman equals 107, just like King Charles. And I've talked about how Cavaliers are supporters of King Charles I in the English Civil War. King Charles was executed in the year 1649. The English Civil War ended in the year 1651, and his son King Charles II was banished to France. The word Mercury, also super interesting. Mercury in Jewish gematria equals 798. Cleveland in Jewish gematria also equals 798. Also 103, a number I've seen a lot around the Cleveland Cavaliers. 923 was 103 days before the Cavs went 23-9 against Toronto. Like I said in the last video, Drake has a song called Back to Back. Back to Back equals 69, just like Cleveland Cavaliers. Toronto was the team that hosted the All-Star Week. That's where Drake's from. That's when I started noticing the back-to-back theme. Russell Westbrook won back-to-back All-Star Game MVPs. Zach LaVine won back-to-back slam dunk contests. Then we've even had Kawhi Leonard getting back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year. Steph Curry's going to get back-to-back MVPs. But moral of the story, 103, a number I've seen a lot around the Cleveland Cavaliers. More than this, I just didn't write them in here. I'm trying to make this a little bit shorter. But Nancy Reagan also equals 103 and 618 twice, which was super interesting. It connects to this 9/19 date. I've talked about how I think there's more of a connection to the 9/19 date this year than the 9/23. 618 in gematria equals 199 and also 919, which could be, if you write it as a date, September 19th, 19/9, or also 9/19. September 19th, also the same day that James Garfield died, the 20th president. He was shot at a train station 79 days before he died, and he died on September 19th. Pope Francis just turned 79 years old this year. I talked about the death of Merle Haggard, how it ties into 923 and trains. LeBron James' full name even equals 79. More 79s too, but some interesting ones I wanted to point out. I've also mentioned a lot of 51 in regards to Pope Francis turned 15 years old in the year 51. Donald Trump is 15 years, 51 days older than Obama. When the Lakers beat the Warriors this year, it was Kobe Bryant's 1,551st game. Kanye West in Jewish gematria equals 1,551. Kanye West also equals 51 in simple gematria. I even talked about how Philadelphia is connected to the 15's and the 51's as well. Philadelphia in gematria equals 101 and 65. 1965 was 51 years ago. 1915 was 101 years ago. Anyway, in regards to this royalty and whatnot that I keep talking about, because the Cavs are connected to the royalty, It's one of the main reasons why I don't think that they're gonna win, because King Charles was executed and also banished, or whatever, the year 50 would. It just doesn't seem like a good number. Cleveland Cavaliers equals 168. Queen Elizabeth II equals 168. Even Prince Charles dies equals 168 in Gematria. So super interesting. I've talked a lot about Prince Charles becoming the king and dying fast or whatever because it would fit with the history and whatnot. Anyway, on 9/9 last year, Queen Elizabeth became the longest reigning British/English monarch of all time. She surpassed Queen Victoria, and Queen Victoria just so happened to die 51 years and 15 days before Queen Elizabeth became the queen. She even died on January 22nd, the 122. Pope Francis equals 122. Golden State equals 122. That was the day that Steve Kerr came back to the Warriors on the 44th game. The Warriors even scored 122 points. David Blatt, the Cleveland Cavaliers coach, also got fired on that day, 122 days before his birthday. Kobe Bryant, who tore his Achilles versus the Golden State Warriors. Tons of stuff with that, but he's super connected to the Philadelphia and also the Golden State Warriors. When he scored his 81 points, it was even on January 22nd, and the Lakers even scored 122 points that night. Queen Elizabeth, super surrounded with the number 62 as well. That's why I thought the 919 was in connection to her, but Pope Francis went to Cuba on 9/19 this year, and then Obama randomly goes to Cuba. He's the first president to do so in 88 years. 9/19 is the 262nd day of the year. Obama went to Cuba 6 months, 2 days after Pope Francis was in Cuba. Queen Elizabeth was born in 1926. She became the queen on 2/6. She even turned 26 years old in 1952. She was coronated on 6/2, 62 years ago. This year will be her 63rd anniversary of her coronation. It also just so happens to be the day the NBA Finals begin. The word queen in Gematria even equals 62 and 26. So, I mean, I put a whole bunch of other 51s and stuff in here. The whole point of this whole thing about Freddie Mercury, I just wanted to point it out. I just talked about Kanye West and Taylor Swift, and then we get an article about Freddie Mercury, who is actually connected to the Kanye West and the whole stuff that I've talked about. I know there's not really any substance to this article other than Freddie Mercury had a vibrato voice, like, can't even remember it. Some type of singers or whatever. That was the whole point of the article. There wasn't really much substance to it. But the whole point was just that it's connected to Kanye. Anyway, even in the article here, they show us this. 3.13 APR with a 5-1 ARM here. I mean, Pope Francis became the Pope on 3/13 of 2013. 5-1, right? I mean, 51 stuff. They even got Charlie Sheen over here. Sheen equals 51 in Gematria. Charlie Sheen had AIDS right after the Paris attacks and whatnot. He had HIV, just like Freddie Mercury. I also talked about how, in my previous videos in my playlist, if you watch it, I talk about how Kanye West is connected to the Paris attacks. Lots of 139. Freemasonry equals 139 in Gematria. Another reason I'm putting this out is just because, just once again, to make my case that I feel like the Cleveland Cavaliers aren't going to win because of their connection to all these 51s. Antonin Scalia equals 51. He died this year. He died on a date numerology of 51. They're connected to King Charles, which I don't think is a good thing. And then also, in regards to Queen Elizabeth, with the Queen Victoria dies 51 years and 15 days before Queen Elizabeth becomes the queen. It just seems like 51 is surrounded by a lot of death, and it makes me think, even though it seems like the Cavaliers should totally win it, they're super loaded up, it makes me wonder if it's, an April Fool's joke, April Fool's equals 51. So I wanted to finish this video out with some 51s that I wrote down over the last, months or last year or so. Some super interesting ones. So Queen Elizabeth's mother was 51 years old when Queen Elizabeth became the king. So that's when her husband died, age 51. And she sticks out to me a lot because she's born on August 4th, the same day that Obama was born, but she's exactly 61 years older than Barack Obama. She was also coronated on 5/12/1937, so exactly 78 years before the Philadelphia Amtrak crash last year. If you write out 7/8 in gematria, it equals 51. Also, if you write out August 4th, it equals 51, which makes me wonder even more so about Obama being assassinated. The day that he was born even equals 51. Also, Huey Newton equals 51, the Black Panthers founder. Boston Bruins, I've talked about Happy Gilmore and whatnot, and how his favorite team is the Boston Bruins. Talked about how it's connected to Philadelphia and an earthquake in the Comcast Center. Also, the movie Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad equals 51. Even the movie The Revenant, that had the whole bear scene. There's a whole bunch of bear symbolism this year. The California state flag even has the bear on it and whatnot. The Revenant equals 51. There's been lots of coding to defeating Chicago pretty much, or the Bulls. Chicago's the Windy City. Windy City equals 51. I also talked about when Steve Harvey crowned Columbia, and then he crowned the wrong person or whatever, and they had to take it back at the Miss Universe pageant. Steve Harvey equals 51. I just wondered if there was some type of change in power, right? If Queen Elizabeth is going to die and whatnot. And I noticed today that Prince died. Hopefully we'll get my post out about Prince later, but I've been talking about it forever. I thought it was Prince Charles, which maybe it still is, but interesting. A prince actually died on Queen Elizabeth's birthday, of all days, Anyway, the Philadelphia experiment equals 122, just like Pope Francis and whatnot. But it was a supposed hoax time travel experiment, and the boat in this was called the USS Eldridge, that equals 51. But what sticks out to me about this is that the code name for this was Project Rainbow, and it tied back into the day that gay marriage was legalized, right? The rainbow is the symbol of the gay people and whatnot. There's a whole bunch more to it, but just wanted to point out the boat in that is actually adds up to 51. I even talked about Wilt Chamberlain being the true Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Wilt the still equals 51. He even played college at Kansas. A lot of things that went back to the Kansas train derailment that was going to Chicago that crashed in Kansas. Boise, Idaho equals 51. It's the 43rd state. I only mention this because of the Hotels.com commercial. And they had like blackout dates and all kinds of stuff. And the area in Idaho was super surrounded with a whole bunch of stuff. Also, Napoleon died at the age of 51. Osama bin Laden died on 5/1. We even had the death of Harper Lee this year at the age of 89. Her last book was Go Set a Watchman, that equals 51. When Kanye was said George Bush doesn't like black people, Mike Myers was there. I also talked about Rockstar and all kinds of stuff, but Wayne's World equals 51. Wayne Campbell is who Mike Myers plays in that movie, equals 51. The Geneva Bible came out 51 years before the King James Bible. 2 Douche equals 51. World War I equals 51. Hawaii equals 51, where Obama's supposedly from. Also, Rome equals 51 in regards to the Pope. I also, in August, made a whole bunch of videos or a series on Princess Margaret. For whatever the reason, she's super coded because of the number 85. She was also the first royal to get a divorce since Henry VIII, which is a very long time. But Prince Charles was the second when he got a divorce to Diana. Margaret's only daughter is Sarah Chatto, who equals 51, even turned 51 last year on 5/1. Geronimo equals 51. That's who the Skull and Bones supposedly stole his bones and whatnot. Ronda Rousey, she lost this year, or last year, whatever, equals 51. Talked a lot about Lupercalia as well. The day that Antonin Scalia died was the first day of Lupercalia. Antonin Scalia equals 51. A date numerology of 51. Wolf Festival equals 51. Wolverine equals 51. Also, Hitler Salute equals 51. Francis Bacon. Michael Fox, like Michael J. Fox. The guy who invented basketball, James Naismith, equals 51. New York Mets, Kauffman Stadium. Age of Pisces, Bodie McBoatface. Even Michael equals 51 in regards to Michael Jordan. At the North Carolina game, he even mentioned that was back when he was just Mike, and now that he's Michael. And then UNC lost, so just kind of interesting. Michael equals 51, and he's Michael now, so. Also, CNN had a movie about Steve Jobs, and it came 1,551 days after he died. You know, Kobe played his 1,551st game when the Lakers defeated the Warriors. In that game, Kobe lost his shoe. Kobe loses shoe equals 51. And when he lost his shoe, the Warriors got their 51st point. The Lakers won that game, keeping their 51 losses on the season even. So who knows, you know? I just wanted to point out some of these 51s. Seems like it's not a good number to be associated with. But at the same time, maybe it's just bad for the other team. You know? I don't know. But whatever. Have a good one.